How's it going, everybody? Corbin here, and I just attempted my first desk flip, desk makeover, desk restoration, whatever you want to call it. Very first time doing something like this, taking an old desk, the desk that you see right here, which was in very, very bad shape, bought it online, and I loved the shape of it and the aesthetic, I guess, and I wanted to see what it could turn into, bring it into a more modern type of furniture. So I'm going to be walking through the whole process, everything that I learned from my first time basically flipping furniture or restoring furniture. So hopefully you find this video fun and enjoy the whole thing, I guess. Here's a little sneak peek of the desk behind me. You're gonna be getting a full preview of it, obviously, as we go through and build it. So just a reminder, here is what the desk looked like before. As you can see, a lot of scratches and stuff. So I started by removing the hardware on the desk and then giving it a good wipe down to get rid of all the dust and all the gunk on top of it, because this thing was pretty dirty. So we had it all cleaned. It was now time to start sanding. I am using an orbital sander and here using 80 grit sandpaper. I went through and did 80 grit and then I went up to, I believe, 120 grit and then up to 220 grit just to get it as smooth as possible. Now, if you wanted to use a hand sander or not an orbital sander to go through and sand this, you could do so, but I wouldn't recommend it. It would take a long time. Some people do like to use stripper to go through and apply that to the whole desk. You'll see here later on that I actually use stripper to get in some of the kind of indents in the wood. You'll notice on these shelves how when I go through and sand it, there is basically still a layer of stain that is in the middle there because of that pattern. So I'll go through and use stripper to go through and remove that. And as you can see, here's another example that is just a place where it would be hard to go through and sand because it's kind of indented over there. The stripper that I use is called Citrus Strip. It's really easy to go through and apply. I just basically got a brush and then went through and applied it to all those areas where there was still stain or it was hard for me to go through and sand, including those desk drawers as you see there. After I applied all the stain, I came back the next day with a steel wool pad, an old toothbrush, and some mineral spirits to go through and scrub out all of that citrus strip. Now, I will leave a link down below to everything that I did use in this video in case you are wondering, but this made it a lot easier to go through and get rid of that stain essentially on there. Without it, it would have been very difficult and a lot of maybe hand sanding essentially. You can see it gets kind of gunky when you are removing the stain, but here's the difference before and after what that looks like inside of this desk drawer, for instance. So it is very effective at getting rid of the stain, but it can get a little messy. And that's why I prefer sanding when possible. But in situations like this, it just made sense to use the stripper. After I was done with the stripper and getting all the stain out there, I then went and sanded this one more time with 220 grit sandpaper to make it really smooth. From there, I wiped away all the sawdust and then began staining. I used this dark walnut stain that you see up here. I like to use a nice foam brush to go through and apply it, and then I just have a rag that I go and wipe it through. And I want to give a second to shout out our friends over at Home Depot. They have created a new DIY on trends workshop on their website that you can check out. Inside of here, essentially, they have tons of different projects like how to build a board and batten wall and other trending things in the DIY space. It even has all the materials you need to complete the project and step-by-step instructions. I will leave a link to this down below in case you want to check it out. And thanks to Home Depot for sponsoring this video. And now back to the desk. For the paint color on the drawers, I went back and forth a lot on the color, but decided on this Melting Icicle color by Behr. As you can see, I went through and painted the middle little indents in the drawer first and then went and rolled it. I wanted the desk to be a little unique, so as you can see, I went through over and added a little arrow on top of the drawers. I'm using the Melting Icicle color, and Black Peppercorn, I believe, is the color for the black one as arrow as well. Just added some tape there and then peeled that off. After the first drawer came out really good with the little arrow that I put on, I decided to get very cocky and I went for a crazy design thinking that this would be really cool. As you can see here, I'm going through and taping out to add this little black line essentially across the desk for a more modern look. But you will see here very quickly that this did not necessarily turn out the way that I had hoped it would. Basically, when I was going back to peel back the tape, it kind of bled through. It wasn't clean at all. And I had to go through and actually just re-sand these drawers because it turned out so bad, as you can see here. I just ended up repainting those drawers white and keeping it very simple. Once my stain was dry, it was now time to go through and add a coat of polyurethane. For those who don't know, polyurethane helps protect the wood and give it kind of a glossy finish. Now, as you're watching this video, you're going to watch me make a few mistakes that I want to point out, and be sure that you don't make the same mistake. I couldn't really see these as I was painting them, but very clearly in the camera here, you can see these little streaks that I'm letting go through as I'm staining this. You want to make sure that this doesn't happen to you. And here in a couple of seconds, I actually make an even bigger mistake. Essentially, after I had
added the stain. I realized this after it had dried, and I had to go back and sand it a little bit and then go through and add the polyurethane again. So don't make the same mistake I did here, and make sure you don't miss any spots. And you'll also notice that I have my polyurethane in a separate container in a little cup. I was watching a video on how to do polyurethane, and the guy was saying that you don't want to use the bucket that you have for your polyurethane because it contaminates it somehow or something. So when you do your polyurethane, make sure to add it in a separate container when you are applying it. For the handles, I did think about reusing the old ones, but they were kind of falling apart and a lot of the screws weren't there, and I couldn't really get them to look kind of modern even if I went through and spray painted them. So I decided to go with these black modern looking handles. And I'm glad I did, because I think it looked good with the color scheme that I had going on. And now it's time to check out the final reveal on this thing. As you can remember, this is what it looked like before, and boom, this is what it looks like after. I am actually pleasantly surprised at how well it turned out, and honestly makes me want to do this more often with furniture. So if this is something you like, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe and follow along.